Welcome back, Mighty Mighty Souls. My name is Stephen Koss. This is episode 4, Initiation, Journey of the Origin of the Universe, with Matias de Stefano, MDS as I'll refer to him. And this episode is entitled The Four Pillars of Reality. And this is a little bit of a doozy, let's call it, of an episode. But as MDS talks about the four pillars, he goes through them as expression, experience, integration, and transcendence. And if we go back to our duality episode, we know that unity split into the positive and negative, or purpose and mission. And that in the last video, that spirit, soul, and body form matter. And out of that, what holds this third dimension together is time. And you might have seen this in Christianity, for example, with the cross. Or maybe you've seen this symbol a lot more around, but we'll get into those as we go further into the video. But let's just look into what the four pillars are and kind of define them. Number one, the expression, right? We go back to unity. The I am says, what can I become? How can I express? So it's really the self of the inside wanting to explode outward. And then once it does that, and it goes, yes, I want to do these things. This is who I am. This is Stephen Koss. How can I experience these? We experience all these things through our five senses. Smell, touch, hear. And then we can actually live. We can live it, what we have created. And then once we have understood that, we have to integrate it, we have to put it together like the puzzle. I'm going to get back to that, and then transcending is just it's the opposite of expression, so it's the whole completion of the circle where you understand. So the four pillars of reality: expression, experience, integration, transcendence. The self of who I am, going outward, what can I become? And once I'm in that, the senses, living up to it, and then putting it all together, and then going, oh, I understand it, now I can come back home. He uses a great example in the show of being a child with a wild imagination. And if you're like me, you probably built forts when you were a kid. It's funny when he brought that up, because we had our family room. You walk down a little 3 steps of stairs, and the fireplace was over here, and there's all the windows back, and we had all these cardboard boxes full of toys. And we would break those toys out, and we'd throw them everywhere, and we'd want to make a fort. Like, you got this wild imagination, these boxes of toys, and you put together a fort with your blankets and pillows and your other toys, and you're experiencing it, the expression of what you could become, all of that. And then your mom comes home and she's like, what is all of this? Please clean up this room, put it together, integrate it. And I was like, oh, that does make sense, because there's all these different possibilities with 4 different cardboard boxes of toys and blankets and pillows I could put together for, or make different games up. It's like, how many games could I actually come up with? And then the shit's all spread everywhere out, and I've worked a long day. Oh my goodness, how are you going to integrate this and bring it all back? And then explore the possibility again tomorrow and understand it. So I thought that was an interesting metaphor to put together the 4 pillars. But also, I want to touch on real quick before we go to the next page here. You always have goals in life, right? Remember when I was going through a downtime about a year and a half ago, and my cousin was like, goals, 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 Steve, what's your goals? And if you know me, you know I'm a very goal-oriented person, and really had nothing to do with that. But you want to achieve whatever goal. Let's say you want to graduate college, and then you want to go to law school, right? So you got to do 4 years before you can get into law school, right? And you have this goal, and then you get there. We keep saying, oh, if I live here in this third dimensional and I get to reach this goal, I'll fill that void inside of myself. And really, what the 4 pillars are explaining to you at the end with transcendence is like the goal, the major goal, is the process. Because you're going to, in order to complete your journey, you're going to have to do infinite realities. So it's more like when you take that journey and you have a destination, like I did a lot of West Coast trips driving, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be here, blah, 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 on this date, and I'm going to end it there. And it's not really about getting to the end, it's about the process, the journey. Alright, let's look into that. Okay, I just erased that, but let's rewrite it again so it sticks up in the noggin, right? You got expression, experimentation, integration, and then transcendence, right? And I was talking about that symbol earlier. You can look at it the same way as being born, grown, reproducing, and then dying. You can also see the same with the earth. You can look at it and say, oh, that's just like spring, summer, fall, and winter. It's interesting that all these things come together in everyday living. Well, we always keep looking at dying. That's something we fear so much, right? We're scared of the Grim Reaper. We don't understand death. We understand it's natural. Nobody was like, yeah, I'm ready. It's time for me. Thank God they're giving me the present. As MDS is like, when we look at it from the 4th dimension, at a spiritual body, and you're like, oh, time. And I've created all this, and now I'm experiencing it as this expression, integrating, and coming to transcendence. You're like, that's a gift. You're freeing me from the creation. But we never think of it in those terms because we're stuck in the 3D so hardcore and survival mode. Which is what's killing all of us, to be honest. And this comes... Let's just start right there. Survival mode. It's a process we've made for ourselves, right? Like what I was talking about in the last video. You incarnate into an earth plane. You got this avatar. And then you start believing that the avatar is all that you are, and you need shelter, and things in the night may attack you, and you go to survival mode. This is the same when I tell people to lose weight. They're like, how do I lose weight? I'm like, well, you got to eat first thing in the morning. How much are you eating? They're not eating enough. I go, well, when you were, you know, humans have been around for about 10,000 years. Previously, we're hunter-gatherers, we're walking, we're eating all the time, the body's churning it up. And then it goes, well, shit, when they're walking and there's no food, you're in a desert, or, you know, oasis coming up, you know, truck stop. It stores whatever you had in you as fat for later. So you need to continuously eat to keep the factory rolling. And how that translates to this in survival mode is like, we've made a survival mode for ourselves. So like, we've got to work a certain amount of hours in a week. so we can then pay our bills to live, which equals a survival mode. And it's like when you get to the point where Vince talks about, and you know, was that a video or two ago when I was talking about his book, 10 most important things you know to know in life. The first rule, number one, knowing life is finite and you are going to die. It's just part of the process. The process, which is the number one goal. Now, if I know I'm going to die, I'm finally able to live. I'm not in fear of a car accident and I get killed. I'm not in fear that COVID is going to cut my life short. I'm not in fear that there's going to be a home invasion or I'm going to get shot when I'm in, you know, metropolitan area. I know that I'm going to die, and I'm okay with that because I know my consciousness is not going to die. Just, it was the time. And we live in fear of that so much. We don't understand the four pillars of coming back to transcendence. Like, we've got to learn this over and over and over again. It's not going to happen first time around. Alright, so where are we going to go from there, right? We're talking about the four pillars and knowing that through purpose and mission, body, matter, space, let's call it, and time, which holds it all together, they're here to express, you know, an infinite possibility of what Stephen Koss can perceive, experience, integrate, and then transcend back to home. Alright, let's talk about this for a minute, about splitting up the subconscious. I don't know, this fourth dimensional stuff's going to go a little bit, probably over most people's heads, but so we got to experience this an infinite number of times through the four pillars of reality. And we are conscious in everyday living. We're unconscious, and then we have our subconscious. Now, this is interesting right here, because this is the fourth dimension. This is where Stephen is moving through just with time and not space. If you're here in everyday life on the earth plane and you gotta go to work in the morning and you're starting, it's like, okay, you pull up your map, it's like, this is my location. And I need to go to here where work is. You take the Durs way, workaholics, 2 lefts and a right, whatever. You get to work. And you're like, oh, that's how I've got to move in the third dimension because I have a body. In the fourth dimension, you move through time where you can see everything happening simultaneously. And they look at that quite differently because there's not a body to move. It's just energy. So, how am I going to tie that in here? I guess one thing when people say, when you die, you die. That's it, right? They're agnostic. They don't believe in any kind of God or afterlife or quantum for that matter. But it's like, how could I just die if I just said when you're in your subconscious, you're in the fourth dimension. So how could that ever die? It's just anything to think about when people are like, well, when it's over, and that's it. It's just black and it's over. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Don't you like lay in bed, leave your body? I had a crazy dream. I was on this pirate ship. Cannons were going off, blah, blah, blah. Captain was yelling at me, and it's like, well, wait a minute. What universe is that in? What parallel dimension? Oh, it was just made up in your head, but you left your body. You weren't awake. So wouldn't that be nothingness? Wouldn't that be hearsay? But then again, wait, you lived it. You felt it when you woke up, and you're like, man, that's real. I can really feel what it felt like to be there. So I guess that's my argument against people who are like, well, I think it's over, that's it. Well, you're already connected to other dimensions. Even if you haven't had spiritual experiences, you've been places that you've never been before and experienced feelings that you knew to be true, to be real. So just going back to the basics of the episode was really like, you got your 4 pillars: expression, experience, integration, and transcendence. But you got the number one thing for the video was knowing that like your number one goal is the process using the 4 pillars. And that's something different to think about, because you don't live your life like that every day when you're going to your goals. You're not saying the goal equals process. Usually process equals the goal, right? But the goal of this expression is experience, integration, and then transcendence. And that is the goal. So when you fail and things aren't going right, but just, that's the experience. That's the integration. Bring it back. Oh, that didn't work out this time. I understand that. It's like Western Messerson. Trial and error. So, when you do transcendence, and you maybe heard the term enlightened beings, enlightened men and women, and MDS says this, I thought he's like, they're not super enlightened. They haven't conquered everything in the universe. They've just conquered one perspective of like Stephen Cross could be, understanding it from infinite possibilities. So that's just one notch on the wheel that moves around. Not cutting anything away from them. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. But it's not end all be all. You know, I think we got to keep that, I think we got to keep this symbol in mind here. There's no alpha and omega. There's no start and finish. And if you think you're heading somewhere, you're already actually there. You're just not experiencing it. You have those 5 senses in this 3D, but there's other senses that are untapped. But really, an awesome thing he said at the end of the episode, he's like, when you do transcend and you go through that wheel or whatever, and you move up to a higher conscious being, he goes, most higher conscious beings are spherical. You know, we talked about the purpose and mission, and the body and the space, and coming together as a sphere. He's like, the earth is super far ahead of us. And we're expressions. I thought this was super interesting. Of the earth. We don't live on the earth. We are the earth. That's kind of spun my wheels a little bit. I was blown away by that, because I thought previously I said it floats like we live on the very surface of this giant being, right? 7 continents and 5 oceans, and like a hurricane 5 will just like fleas on a dog out of here. But really, the earth breeds us, gives us everything we need. Express, experience, integrate, and transcend. But we never think of ourselves as expressions of the earth. And another thing that kind of popped me off too was the solstices. As we look into ancient culture, like Stonehenge, for example, you know, these are huge dates. Summer and winter solstice. These are huge events when things are lining up. And there's monuments built in the past to honor these days. These should be major holidays, I think. And things are lining up in that expression, experiment, integration, transcendence. Born, grow, reproduce, die. Spring, summer, fall, winter. See, all of this keeps getting connected. It's funny because we look at this stuff and we think about it like getting to these higher dimensions or evolving. And we think of it as a 3D step process of, okay, in order to get to my degree, you know, in year 1, I gotta do these classes. You know, in year 2, I've gotta do, you know, the internship. In year 3, I've got to join the club. And we look at it as 1, 2, 3. I started off here. I got to go here first to get to here. But really, it's all right here. And it's just pulsating. And can you move between the webs instead of going with your body to A, B, and C? Well, I guess we'll end it there because that was kind of a tough episode for me, but smile big, shine broad. Peace.